Okie dokie, I believe this is running. Let me double check as per usual that the audio is working and there's no issues with the video. So bear with me for just one moment, everybody, as I check that. I hope you're having a good, what is it, Tuesday today? Wednesday today. Hope you're having a good Wednesday. I know my Wednesday has been pretty good so far. Had my Mandarin class, which was good. Got some work stuff later, and overall, it's kind of just looking like a good day. I think this is working. Yep, we have no issues. Audio is good, video is good, fantastic. Well, let's dive right into today's episode. So, this is episode number 20 of Azren's Journal. For those of you who are new to this whole segment and haven't watched these videos before on my channel, it's pretty straightforward. This is a segment on my YouTube channel where I talk about my personal language learning journey, my personal language learning efforts, and of course a segment where I give you guys a whole bunch of different language learning tips. I want to start on the advice side of things today, which is going to tie into a personal life update. And it has to do with preparation, the whole title of this video. Preparation, preparation, preparation. Preparation is so important when it comes to learning another language. And when I say preparation, I mean preparation in all senses. So I'll give you an example. Right now, as I've mentioned at least once or twice on my YouTube channel, I am doing my final preparations for a trip to Taiwan. I'm going to be in Taiwan, I'll be living with a Taiwanese family, and I will be taking intensive Mandarin classes while I am in Taiwan. It's going to be a lot of fun, I'm looking forward to it. Before actually going to Taiwan, I am taking some private lessons on italki, so that is italki.com. I'm taking some private Mandarin lessons in order to prepare. Because I know, based on my last experience living with a homestay family, because this time I will be staying with the homestay family in Taiwan. The last time I stayed with the homestay family, there were so many situations, simple situations, little things, that had a lot of meaning and that could have made my experience better, but I wasn't able to talk about those things. So what I've done on my phone, I'll actually tell you what's on it. I'll even pull it out for you here. What I've done on my phone is I've made a list of different things that I want to be able to say before I arrive to make my experience a little bit smoother. So for example, I want to be able to compliment the homestay family house. I want to be able to say, wow, you have a great house, it's so nice. So I'm basically taking some lessons to figure out what kinds of things do you say in Mandarin that sound natural to compliment someone's house. Right? Or even things like, I have another category on my phone which says, how do you say I'm sorry in different ways? Often when you are meeting people of a different cultural background or linguistical background, you might want to apologize for certain things, but you don't always want to say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. You don't want to keep saying it over and over and over and over. You want to try other ways to get the same message across so you don't sound repetitive. And so people really understand that the words you're saying, you mean the words that you're saying, if that makes sense. Or even things like, thanks, I really appreciate it. I know how to say thank you in Mandarin. That's something we usually learn in foreign languages reasonably quickly. But how do you say I appreciate that? That adds a different level, a whole different layer to the thank you. And so I want to know how to say that. I have a whole bunch of things, right? Talking about Canada. I want to make sure I'm really well versed in talking about our population, what to do in Calgary, what tourist sites there are. How do you call these tourist locations in Mandarin, right? What's our climate like? My day-to-day life. Like, there's a lot of stuff I want to make sure I'm really, really, really prepared about. Even essential, I have a whole list of things, I can do this forever, but preparation is going to be something that's really important for me when I'm going to be in Taiwan to make sure that the experience is as, as positive as possible. Even if you're not traveling abroad, preparation is something that matters tremendously. I find that often to be fluent or to achieve a fluent or a very high level in a language, often people feel like it comes down to having spontaneous language abilities. In other words, people feel like it comes down to you being able to think on the spot, and because you're able to think on the spot and adapt on the fly, you are fluent in blah 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 language. That's not really how it works in my experience. Usually it goes in a few different phases. Phase 1 is you need to prepare for many conversations you're going to have. Most of the time, not always, but most of the time, you can predict the types of conversations or the types of people or the types of things that you're going to be coming across. It's reasonably easy. If you're going to be traveling as a tourist, you can predict at tourist sites what kind of things you're going to have to say and what kind of things you're going to have to communicate, who you're going to interact with. Pretty predictable. If you're doing like me and you're going to be living with a Taiwanese family, I'm trying to think out and predict some of the common conversations and things that I'm going to have to be able to say. You can predict if you're taking language classes, and that's primarily where you're using your language as of right now. I don't know where this came from. You can predict things. You're going to have to talk about homework, about assignments, compositions, essays, tests. There's a lot of stuff you can predict a lot before you jump into any situation where you have to use the language. So you can prepare, learn the vocabulary that you think you'll need to know, learn some phrases, learn some grammar points that maybe you would need to know to talk about whatever things you'll need to talk about. You can prepare. And the more you prepare in advance, the more fluent and more fluid your conversations are going to be. If you follow my podcast or my Instagram, heck, even my Facebook, I talked about it everywhere yesterday. I was at a Chinese restaurant yesterday, and I wanted to order some soup that did not have any meat. So I ordered in English, and I told the lady, hey, can I get this soup? And I asked her if it had any meat. She said, no, there's no meat. We can make sure it's completely vegetarian. I said, fantastic. However, when the soup came, the soup had chicken, and I had a suspicion that they used chicken broth or chicken stock as the soup base. So I was like, man, this is not what I asked for. I asked for a vegetarian soup because I am vegetarian. And so, before calling the waitress over, because I thought that maybe her English wasn't fantastic based on her first interaction. So before calling her over, I learned how to say chicken broth, beef broth. I learned how to say vegetable broth. I learned how to say all the different types of broths because I knew I might have to talk about that, and she might not know how to talk about that or what I'm trying to say if I say it in English. I reviewed a lot of my meat vocabularies, right? I thought about, what am I going to say in Mandarin? What if she doesn't understand? Is there another way I can say it? What other menu items do I want to ask about? I really prepared mentally. Then I called her over. I tried in English, and as I predicted, she struggled to understand. She didn't really follow what I was saying. So I switched over to Mandarin, and we had a very in-depth conversation about what items exist in all of the menu items. We had a very in-depth conversation about it, and I was able to clearly communicate, hello Emmy in the chat, I was able to clearly communicate what the problem was and what resolution I wanted to have. And so she ended up making me another soup with no beef broth, no chicken broth, no meat, and it worked out really good, and I had a fantastic meal. But it all basically happened on the back of me preparing for the conversation. Eventually what's cool about preparation is that once you've prepared for something once or twice and you've had that conversation a couple of times, you're not going to have to prepare for it the next time. So the next time I have to explain, I can't have beef broth or whatever, right? Or there's beef in this chicken. Can you make it again? If I ever need to have that conversation again, I'm not going to have to prepare as much. Maybe I'll have to remember a couple things and refresh my vocabulary on a few things because I forgot. But generally, I'm going to be a heck of a lot better. And by the time I've had that conversation 3, 4, 5 times, now all of a sudden it's become natural. And what's interesting is often people find that speaking naturally is the same as speaking spontaneously. And they're very different skills. They're extremely different. It might seem like I'm speaking spontaneously, but I'm not. It's that I've had a similar type of conversation in the past, and I'm drawing on that knowledge in order to create that automatic speech at the moment. That's really what's happening when people are speaking automatically. Because, in fact, here's a fun fact. In our mother tongues, in English for me, right, or whatever language you speak as your first language, speaking spontaneously is something that you will struggle to do. It is something you probably are not able to do. You probably can't speak spontaneously in any language, mother tongue or not. I know a great example of this. A couple examples I can think of. Number one, I used to do, here's a fun fact I've never shared before. I'll give you a YouTube exclusive. When I was in university, my very first year, a friend of mine who I had met in high school had found an improv comedy club. So basically it's a club where you can go and learn and participate in and do improv comedy. Improv comedy, for those of you who don't know, it's when you stand up on a stage, a bunch of you act, but nobody's prepared anything. You're given a situation, and boom, you have to act it out improvised. So you have to speak very spontaneously and get things out without any preparation. And it's hard. Nobody can do it at first. Nobody. You have to actually train and practice and practice and practice and practice until eventually what happens is it's not that you're able to speak spontaneously. People think it is when you watch an improv show. It seems super spontaneous, but it's not. People have improv styles. If you ever see this, like I go to this improv comedy club in my city. Like I watch it, and there's certain people that act regularly, and they have an improv comedy style. They have a style. There's certain things they do. They've figured out a pattern in order to speak spontaneously, but even them, they're not speaking spontaneously. In my old work, I used to run a window cleaning business. I've talked about it before. I used to call customers. Sometimes it'd be calling to remind of appointments. Sometimes it'd be calling to ask to book their window cleaning. A lot of different types of calls. You would think it's easy to pick up the phone and be like, to remind someone, hey, you have an appointment coming next week. You would think it's easy, but it's not. It's not spontaneous. I had to learn it. It's a pattern. It came through the preparation. So I don't think it's a good idea to try and achieve a point where you're able to speak spontaneously, because that's not realistic. Very few people can speak spontaneously. It's very difficult. Even now, I'll finish on this note. It seems like I'm speaking spontaneously in front of the camera, and I am. I prepared a little bit for this, but not really. The things are just coming out of my mouth, but it's just a pattern. It's just something that I've done. I've made so many videos now that my brain goes into a state where it's natural to just speak. So, by the way, I feel like this is such a good video. Maybe I'm wrong, but if you've liked this video, please hit the like button. I think this has been a really good one and a useful one. I want to see if I'm just completely crazy and it's not been useful, but I really think this has been a good one. So let's give you a couple personal life updates and we can finish up. So I received a very interesting email the other day from the Mandarin school in Taiwan where I'm going to be studying. And I'm not sure how I feel about it, to be honest. My original plan was to take 20 hours a week of group classes with this school. However, they basically told me that my Mandarin level is too high for any group classes that they offer, and they've suggested that I take 10 hours of private lessons instead, which I'm not sure I want to do. That's not what I want to do. So I'm trying to problem solve that, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm gonna do about it and what we're gonna do to still figure it out. I want approximately 20 hours of my time occupied every week with Mandarin. I know I would probably still learn maybe a similar amount in 10 hours of private, but I want to be in class 20 hours a week. I want that. It's something that I think matters to me. Or essentially what I'm trying to figure out is how can I make sure that I'm always engaged in Mandarin and always doing something that moves my Mandarin forward. In fact, since I'm saying that, here's a good piece of advice I can give you. Whether you're traveling abroad, hello Stefan in the chat, whether you're traveling abroad, whether you are just studying in classes, whether you're taking a self-study program, whether you're doing whatever the heck you're doing, you have to make sure that the steps you are taking in the language, let me rephrase that. You have to make sure that you structure your study schedule and your study program or your strategy or whatever you want to call it it's structured in a way where you actually are moving forward. There are so many people I see who are studying and practicing and trying to learn a language. They're doing their thing, but they're not really doing anything that's actually super productive for them. They're not actually studying in a way where they're seeing measurable progress. So you have to ask yourself that question. It's going to be difficult at first. In the early phases, it's impossible to know. As a beginner, it's impossible to know. Or when you first start using a specific strategy, it's really difficult to know. It's hard, maybe even impossible. But after 6 to 12 months, even, heck, maybe even sooner, maybe even 3 months, let's say three months, you can start to get a good idea if what you've been doing is working or not. If you are legitimately at the same level or very close to the same level as you were 3 months ago and nothing's really changed, something's wrong with how you're studying the language. You're not doing enough practice, you're not studying enough, your programs you're taking is not great, there's something that's missing there, right? So you have to look at that 3-month benchmark of using a new program or strategy or something to figure out if you are actually going about it in a productive way or not. Anyway, guys, I gotta head out. This has been going long enough anyway, 16 minutes. Again, I really appreciate the likes and the comments. It helps me to understand, what kinds of videos people are liking, what they're not. So please give me some feedback in the comments below. Hit like or dislike. Just give me that feedback so I can see what's useful for you, what's not useful, what kind of things should I keep talking about, etc. And yeah, I guess we'll finish the video up there. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. Bye. Bam. Offline.